You have to be the secretary, Adel.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Calling this meeting to order, the policy committee for the Dearborn Board of Education on May 12th, 2020. Mosip here. Mead,
Yes.
Petskoff.
Here.
Thank you for attending today on this virtual meeting. And today we are talking about certain policies that we would like to review. And the first item on the agenda is the security and staff policies that were reviewed by legal and Mr. Leacher, Director of Health, Safety and Security. I think Mason is and Dr. Maleko in his place.
So,
Oh,
Glenn, you want to talk?
no, I was just gonna turn it over to you.
Oh,
So go ahead.
all right. So I just wanted to point out that there's a couple items at the bottom of the agenda. I know Trustee Mosick requested the safety and security policies, which we briefly discussed at the last meeting or two. Actually a blur, but there was quite a few security policies, and there's since that, then John Leacher, our Director of Security, Safety, and Health Administration, reviewed all of those policies, made recommended changes, which are listed on the link, if you click on that link on the agenda. And then also I had our legal, the district attorney review them as well, and he gave Mr. Leacher's changes of his blessing as well. And then most recently, Trustee Mosick requested policies that address cyberbullying. So I included all the anti-harassment ones that specifically state cyberbullying and cyberstalking as examples under the definition of bullying. And then there's also policy 5517.01, bullying and other aggressive behavior towards students. So that policy doesn't specifically state cyberbullying. But if you scroll down to the area on the agenda that's pending additional committee discussion, you'll see that that was the policy that we had talked about for the resolution, the anti-bullying resolution, recognizing October as National Bullying Prevention Month. And then there was discussion, but no conclusion on the changes that would be made or if that was accepted. Voted in, and then also the MASB recommended changes, and those were pending a vote at this point. They have been discussed at the committee. They also were a board agenda item last month. And then, but David and I didn't feel it was right to move forward with the vote because there was quite a few recommended changes on those bylaws that connect to that link. So I just want to bring that to your attention because those two items were still pending additional discussion. And then Trustee Mosick's requests are added up at the top.
And can I bring in one thing about the agenda? I know that when we started the virtual meetings, the board discussed at that time that our committee meetings would be held to a minimum because of the awkwardness of doing these virtual meetings and the required setups that were necessary and everything that are kind of out of the norm of our normal committee meetings, and that we would only discuss things at the time that were of urgency or needed immediate attention. So the one thing about the board bylaws, that section there, nothing in there is of urgency or needs to be addressed right now. And there were many little moving parts to that I think we should hold off in the hopes that maybe in another month or two, we can meet again together and flesh it out and make sure that we all have the same information rather than trying to kind of do this through this, what Trustee McDonald said yesterday, Hollywood Squares style of conversation, so that we can make sure that everybody, when we bring it before the full board, that we are all comfortable with, because there are many bylaw changes that were kind of small, but are not of any kind of time sensitive nature that we need to address it today, and that we could wait and see if anything changes in the way that we will move forward in meetings. If we have to continue to do this for an ongoing process, then yes, we can bring that in. But quite frankly, I feel a little bit unprepared because we got all of this material today, and I couldn't refresh my memory and go through a lot of this in the time frame that we had presented to us again. So I would prefer to only do those things that have a time-sensitive nature to it today.
Trustee Mead?
Well, I would agree with that concept, and I was wondering what are any of these items that are time sensitive that the superintendent thinks we ought to be getting to the board now?
Dr. Maliko?
Sure. I mean, the ones that I would say, and I don't know the specific numbers, but I do think anything with bullying or aggressive behavior, given when we had the online situation with some of the students. And so that's where I think that we would not want to wait. Now, it's still, we want to go through our normal process, but as we start with the restart committee in the fall, I would be, we just had a discussion again today with actually Mr. Leacher, Mr. Mashur, and our team about how we're going to proceed with those few students that, there was a handful that disrupted learning for the entire district. And then there's a few that, to be honest, was illegal activity. And as a district, we have the ability to take action within the student code of conduct or within board policy. So I would that would be my, issue that I would say, and I'll defer to Mason and David on things that they may feel and or, the Chair Mosip as well. But those were the ones that kind of came up in some of the other meetings, is that's why we may need to get together and meet. And we talked to Mr. Mashur about possibly having a revisit of the student code of conduct as well, and then maybe having something come to the board eventually, the committee, obviously this committee, relative to that, with tightening and maybe being specific to the online environment that we are becoming accustomed to out of, in some regards, it's a positive, but in other regards, it's out of necessity. And we don't want to have interruptions to student learning. So that would be the area that I feel. And then, Mason and David are also been, more directly linked to all these policy. They know more in and outs. I'd also defer to them if they feel there's anything else that is a necessity as well.
Well, which one of those items is it?
So
on the agenda, which one is the?
One's right in the, this is center of the page, all the ones that say anti-harassment next to them. They're all versions of the same policy for different groups. And so they're just slightly different, like one's for student, one's for support staff, one is for professional staff. So there's policy 3362, 5517, and then 4362, and they're all called anti-harassment. Dr. Mead, I don't know if you're looking at the agenda on a screen or not, but what my recommendation would be, well, I don't know, it's up to you how you guys want to tackle it, but if we want to look at one of them, we can present on the screen, but it does include, it's cyberbullying and cyberbullying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I would say we can show them on the screen, and just comment on the whole idea about doing things virtually versus in person. I think going forward, we don't really know how the future entails. We have, unfortunately, to deal with the new normal, and there are policies that are time sensitive, but I don't think we can put off everything until we say we come back.
No, that's why I said, but bylaws are different than policies.
I agree, and I'm okay with delaying it another month, but we really have to.
Yeah, at some point, if we don't,
we will end up having to deal with these bylaws or policies to be updated or as we move forward.
Well, like I said, policies are completely different than bylaws, and the bylaws are something that we can hold off and see if we can manage to get back to some normal type of meetings. If not, then we can just continue to conduct the meetings. But I would just like to put that off for right now and just focus on the policies that are have the most immediate
need by the superintendent
right.
to act, right? So I agree with that. We can delay that until next month. And I'd like to ask if we can, for Dr. Maleko and support, if we can get the agenda item a day before. I think that would be better for all of us, especially with the virtual meetings.
Okay, so I just want to explain that the items, this agenda is taken from last month's agenda and from the previous month's agenda. So the links, oh no, actually, you know what? The links that are added under bullying were just added yesterday when Trustee Moses made the request. So though in the future, I'll make sure to get the agenda to you earlier, but just know that the prior month will have any links attached to it that we discussed.
Okay. What are you expecting of us? When I click on each one of these and read them, I don't know really what to do. What are we supposed to be doing?
So today, we're just approving those changes that are made to these policies.
Okay, so
were there changes made?
I believe.
No
No,
changes were made.
No changes were made. That's what I was going to say, is I saw no changes made.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But on the
The only changes made were and Mr. Leacher has joined us, I see. Hello, John. Yeah. And what was to the those changes were and it was under fingerprinting and other things.
David, do you want to
for those?
Trustee?
Yeah, let me present.
There you go.
Yeah.
So this is the document created by Mr. Leacher, and he can explain the policies that he felt some changes were needed. He reviewed several, and I think he can explain the changes he felt were needed to a couple of the policies.
Before he talks, I just got the feeling in reading that what he recommended is fine with me.
Michael's already done with it.
We still need to run it by you, Dr. Lee.
Oh, all right. Well, okay.
I am happy you have such confidence in us.
I do. I'm not an expert in the field.
Hey, this is John's television debut. Let him have it.
Okay. I'm sorry, John. I apologize, John.
No worries. Let me start by thanking Dr. Mead for that initial vote of support. I appreciate that greatly. So what I did by looking over these policies was basically look at the changes that are recommended basically reflect practices that we're engaged in right now. And because a lot of the policies appear to have not been reviewed for a period of time, these just seem to be things that based on what we're doing already would be things that would get us up to speed with what we're doing already across the district. So that's what those changes are. If there's any questions about them or anything that anyone would like explained further, I'm happy to do that. But again, these are practices that we're doing right now.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
I want to make sure I wasn't misreading the change about the cost of the fingerprinting that we're going to be. Are we talking? That was the original. Is that we took on the burden of the cost, but that we're now including in the language, if I'm reading it correctly, that depending upon the job you're going after, there are different costs and different requirements kind of thing for the type of fingerprinting vetting you need to do. And we were kind of excluding any dollar figure with it or cost, but we're still going to be subsidizing the cost of all the fingerprinting for anybody that we are moving forward. Because don't we ask the parents if they're going to be in the building to go through some kind of Like if they're regular volunteers in the building, some kind of
go through
vetting
that.
process?
Right.
Yeah. So are we paying, are we still paying for all those costs?
The iChat is a free service to us as a government agency. So there's
Okay,
no
so it's
fee for
there-
iChat. We
it's
get
no
a waiver.
Fee for us, okay.
For the fingerprints, there is a fee, but then we don't make a profit on it. We just, the cost that the state and feds charge us, we just relay right now onto the employee. So they pick up that cost. Now, years
So
ago,
they
you're
are
right.
paying, they are paying. it.
Yeah, but
Yes,
we are
that's what I thought.
providing the service of doing it with our staff. So it's probably saving them a small amount, I think, because
So they don't have
if
to
they
go to
went
the
to
police
another
department, yeah.
yeah, or, so that's something we've always discussed. I think that change happened when I was in HR back in like 2012 when we had the budget cuts that hit, and we decided that was one area too that we were
Yeah.
paying a lot, new hires, that we decided that we wouldn't subdue that cost because we would have to pay to the FBI. I think
And
there's
actually,
a fee.
it happened while I was on board because it was a contract conversation that we had during negotiations too about who was going to share that cost, along with work boots and other things. So I know that there was a lot of little nitpicky things. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what I was reading. So the cost will still be passed on to the employee.
Yes, unless we make a change. We had some discussions with Mason and Rob Cedarland about that in HR, what we want to do. The one nice thing for us is because we do our own fingerprinting, then we control it. We control the timing of it. The only other time is that sometimes if a teacher worked in another district, we could request those fingerprints. So we had some discussions on that. That just saves the employee the cost of having to pay another fee.
Because they've already gone through that.
They've already done it,
process.
yeah. But there's
Yeah.
also a time limit on that, I believe, legally as to how long you can use those fingerprints too.
Okay.
So
John.
go
If I
ahead,
comment?
John.
So the current policy basically states that the district absorbs no costs for the cost of the fingerprints. That's 100% on the employee. That's your current policy. We, in practice, and as Dr. Maleko said, it doesn't appear we've been doing this for quite some time, long before I came on board. We have been absorbing some of those costs. So basically the recommendations are in the policy to change those to basically, as I stated, be concurrent and align with what our practices are. To piggyback again on what Dr. Maleko said, he's absolutely correct. If you were to send people to a police department, they would be charged a lot more money than even the $43.25 that we're currently being charged to do those prints, because those agencies typically make a little bit of a profit off of that, if you will, and most of that's to cover the time of their employees to do those fingerprinting. So we're in much better shape still doing that on our own. But I think that it's fair to adjust some of those costs based on the positions that people are applying for.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I understood and it was clear.
I have a question about the CGI security policy. So we're saying no changes, however, we need to do the following. So would those be guidelines as far as for you and not be included in the policies?
So I just want to point out that the administrative guidelines are included on here because Mr. Leacher went through anything that was applicable to security within the policy document online. And so the administrative guidelines usually align with the policies, but never go through the same process as a policy. So the board votes on the policies and makes all the changes to the policies, and based on those changes, then we update the administrative guidelines. Just wanted to make it clear. Cgi Security, is that the one you're talking about, Trustee Moses?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that those are separated and they're not policy, they're just guidelines for you based on the policy, correct?
That's correct, Chairman Moses. Going through that policy, and again, being relatively new to the district, I just wanted to make sure that Mason and anybody involved with making sure those policies are enforced from an HR perspective are making sure that that's what the policy requires, and make sure that we are in fact doing those things. So yeah, it was just more of a note to her to say, just make sure we're doing this stuff, and so we're good to go. And so we don't lose that ability to do that live scanning and be able to take those fingerprints ourselves. So yes, just make sure we're in line with what the federal and state laws are. That'd be correct.
Yeah, and we only approve policies, Addo. Guidelines are
Yep.
developed by the
Understood.
administration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I think I don't have any questions. Anybody else has any questions for
Fine.
this
Good.
item? Good.
We haven't changed your mind, Michael?
No, I'm just happy as can be.
So I just want to summarize to make sure that my notes are accurate in the next step.
Sure.
So the next steps will be that any of the recommended changes on this document will be on the board agenda for discussion item in June. And then if all goes well, then you'll vote on them in July. Is everyone good with that?
Yes.
That's good.
Okay. And then David, you want to go ahead and please present the anti-harassment policy that you had up just moments prior to this? Please.
There you go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't read it.
So if you scroll down, it's a general policy statement that says that the Board of Education wants to maintain a safe work environment free of any type of discrimination or harassment. And then it describes what harassment is based on race, color, national origin, sex, disability, except as authorized by law. And then it says that the district will offer counseling service to any person found to have been subjected to unlawful harassment. And then also to the person who committed the unlawful harassment. And then it describes the school district community as meaning students. Hang on one second. There we go. Just a little higher, David. Thank you. The school district community is referring to students, administrators, and professional and support staff, as well as board members, agents, volunteers, contractors, or any other person subject to control or subject to the control and supervision of the board. And then it also, for the purpose of the policy, includes third parties, and it's not limited to the guests or visitors that are on district property. And then, David, if you could scroll down just a tad, other violations of the anti-harassment policy. And then it defines, right there. And then it defines harassment as meaning threatening, insulting, dehumanizing gesture. And it says use of technology or written, verbal, or physical conduct directed against a student or a school employee. And then it describes that it creates a reasonable, places a student or an employee in a reasonable amount of fear of harm to his or her person or damage or to their property, has the effect of substantially interfering with the student's educational performance, opportunities or benefits or an employee's work performance. And then C, has the effect of substantially disrupting the orderly operation of a school. And an example of this, unfortunately, is oftentimes social media issues that occur on the weekends between kids carries over into the school. And then the problems continue throughout the school day. And then sometimes when we address it, when the building administrator addresses it, the response at times is that, well, this has nothing to do with you. This didn't happen at school. But the bullying that occurred online through social media is now negatively impacting the students that are involved. And then it potentially, in some cases, leads to physical altercations, and it started online. So our position as building administrators has always been that if there's a problem outside of school among our students and it carries into the school building, that it is our responsibility to address it, and we will take it just as serious if it happened during the school day, because it's negatively impacting the student's ability to learn and the school environment.
Good.
And then if you scroll down just a bit, you'll see the bullying definition. Oh, I'm sorry, there's the sexual harassment section. And it talks about Title IX. I won't read all of that. I'm just looking for the cyber parts because that's initially how we got to this. And it describes all the forms of sexual harassment. And then if you could scroll just a bit, David. Not to say that sexual harassment is any less important, of course. I was just.
But Title IX really takes
Yes.
a lot of the steps.
Absolutely. And Trustee Petchikoff, like I'm proud to say our district we were way ahead of the game with Title IX, and we continue to be because we understand the seriousness of it. And when all the employees in the district have to take a Title IX quiz, they have to watch a video and take the quiz each year to earn. And it basically explains, this is what you are responsible for. This is what harassment is. And if you see it or hear it and you don't report it, you're just as responsible as the alleged perpetrator.
I have a question about sexual harassment,
Yes.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
When a teacher is accused or an administrator is accused of sexual harassment and it causes their dismissal from the district, does that person get any exit money? I don't know how to say that.
So
Does everybody get a certain amount of money when they leave?
Well, I can kind of answer that. I guess not necessarily, Dr. Mead, but what happens is there's different rules that the different classifications are under. For example, the teachers are, for any violation, even if it wasn't sexual harassment, whatever it may be, they're under the tenure law. So that kicks in a process of time that you'd have to go through and a whole process. And so that takes a little bit of time to get through it. So not necessarily each situation is dealt with differently. In the case of non-instructional staff, well, they don't have the right to tenure. And so then you're dealing with different legal ramifications with what falls under their contract. In all cases, we have to go through our due process, and they always have right, as you're aware, to union representation. So depending on what it may be, I mean, we are a large district with, around 2,500 employees altogether. And so things do happen that we have to take care of from time to time. But regardless of, not that it's a huge number, but the percentage that we do have to address those issues, there's no set amount that people get other than they're entitled to what they are under the contract. We have to follow due process. We have to follow state and federal law. So, you could have teachers, sometimes they built up days in their banks and other things. So you take that into a factor, but there's no set rule. And our legal counsel would always be advising us as to what a recommendation would be and how to proceed, depending on the case, because cases are there's such a difference depending on what a situation, may entail. And, just because I want to stress this, since we're on this public meeting on record and we presented before the board, I think it's always important to say we always take the administrative leave, and we do that to protect the investigation and the situation. But just because an employee was placed on administrative leave, it is not a finding of wrongdoing. Years ago, when I was HR, they used to call that suspension without pay. Well, we changed that word because it's no determination until we go through and follow all the due process that's required by law. So to be honest with you, there is not a set amount, but there are timeframes within the teacher tenure law and other laws that require a certain amount of time to go through the process. And they have rights under the contract. Like I said, they have benefits under the contract, sick days and other things that have been negotiated or saved up, the right to leave and other things. So it depends on the individual circumstance. There's no set rule per se. Obviously, our first and foremost responsibility would be the safety of students and staff. So that would be how we would act first and foremost. And then we would worry about, how to handle those situations. But we would make sure we take care of those situations that would require swift action, which could lead up to and including termination. Yes, that's a possibility. And a lot of times what we do, that's one of the common terms that Mason and I know this for our HR experience. You have some common legal phrases that you put in any of your documents. We do believe in progressive discipline, though. So we have all that documentation that Rob Cederlin offered, and it's on our website, where it talks about the processes we'll go through But I would say that every situation is individualized depending on the nature of the situation and how severe the violations may be. Again, taking student safety and student interest as the #1 priority when we're handling those.
All
So
right,
I gave you the long answer, and maybe
Well,
not definitive,
it's a
but-
long answer, but what you're telling me is that you can't establish a policy for everybody. It's something that's individualistic and it's determined by a process. So,
Yes.
I think I was reading some policies by school districts that said that if a person is challenged because they have a sexual harassment and it turns out that it is a fact, that they don't get any money when they leave. But now I hear what you're saying is that this is an individual matter and we have due process and the whole bit. So there's no reason to have a policy that says that. The policy is due process rather
Correct.
than
Yes.
any. Okay, thanks. All right.
Thank you.
I have also a question about, as far as sexual harassment or advances, we state that it's either, here actually in this line, it's either verbal or physical conduct. Do we need to state also some kind of online or virtual advances, or is that something that we have to look into more of taking that as part of, if somebody would commit such an act, that would be defined as well, or falls into this category as well if it happens online?
Yeah, we probably could. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't see exactly where the line from my computer, but I would think Mason, would we want to put including online? I think we could.
Sure, absolutely. I was also thinking, I think we definitely add that. And it says, like, now it's crazy because letter C says such conduct
I see it now. Okay.
has the effect of interfering with the individual's work or educational performance. And all that, it says working and or learning environment. And now the learning environment is online. So I don't think it would hurt to add the online component in there. Trustee Moses, I'm also going to check what Neola's updates are, because my guess is they're going to come out with something to address online learning specifically. Another idea, so a couple ideas I was thinking about. We could either just create an entire new policy that just addresses that, and all it has to say is that all the anti-harassment and bullying policies that exist for our district are also applicable to online learning. And then we could have a link once we get to the point where we have our online component of the student code of conduct. We could have a link or refer to the student code of conduct online learning component. That way, if that ever changes, we don't have to change the policy, but that it always says that online learning component of the student code of conduct applies. So that would be another idea, because it's up to however you guys would prefer, but we could either just do that, just create a whole new policy that says, hey, any of the policies that have anti-harassment or bullying include online.
Can I make a suggestion that since this is where the focus is right now, and we're discovering that we have to work virtually, students and staff kind of thing, that we do have policies that address both, because we have policies, these harassment policies are all one, like you said, one's for staff, one's for, so we can make a mirror policies dealing with the virtual environment for students and staff, rather than trying to insert this in our pre-existing ones. And that way we can make sure that we are clear, that it's easily discoverable for everyone, and that if we need to add any guidelines or anything that are just specific to the virtual component of our environment, that we can address it under that one policy, rather than trying to have, because we have so many different policies that we would have to update otherwise.
If I could,
Right.
yeah, I agree with that, trustee Petlicoff. This is, policy 3362 is one of those policies that repeats in several places. This language is also language that has been cleared by Neola's attorneys and, given to us as a standard Neola policy, that is fitting with all the legal laws that apply in the state of Michigan. Oftentimes, after, even though Neola sends us these policies cleared by their attorneys, as a double check, we will run them by our attorneys just to make sure that if there's any nuances that we need to include for our district, they're included in in these policies. So I would be a little leery. I agree. I'd be a little leery about tweaking this particular one, but a newer policy, I think a new policy would seem to make more sense to me. Also,
Specific
Neola
to-
has sent us a updated list of policies pertaining to COVID-19. A lot of them are just, most of them are just guidelines and recommendations. There's only really one policy that on communicable disease that they recommend, that they said if you want to look at this might be a good one to look at. The other thing is Troy Patterson's department just the other day sent a draft copy of a student handbook for online learning that kind of addresses all of these different topics about how students should behave online and not sharing passwords and all of these types of things. It's just a draft. He's still working on it. So I think as that gets a little bit more developed and as he's more secured or, more firmed up with that online student code of conduct, then that might be something that, we can share with the board as well. I don't think it's there yet. I don't think he's ready to do that yet. That's why he just, like I said, he had just shared it the other day and looking for input on it. And I think that may give us more flexibility to make changes as the conditions change. And then we could have a more general policy that just refers to that document.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that makes
I'm
the most
okay with
sense.
that, with having, a separate policy that addresses the online part with regards to this, because it would be a huge undertake to go and change those policies just to apply the online model. So with this being,
I also like that idea too, trustee or Chair Moses.
Yep.
Thank you.
would this be a new policy right under, where would it be on the policies agendas? Would it be
Under what topic?
it would, yeah. Would that be, because
What-
this applies to all, so.
But you have each, if you go and look at all the tabs under you'll see that they have it for staff and a section for staff, a section for students, and then they'll be able to slip it in to right underneath where this anti-harassments are and everything. They'll just have to give it a new number.
Correct.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it would make sense to put it, if you want one for staff, one for students.
Yeah.
But it would make sense to put it under the student section, or there is a more general section, I believe the 7,000s, that something regarding technology could apply to everybody.
Yeah, that's operations. I think it's called operations.
Operations.
To everyone.
I mean, that's just tweaking where once we get the policy written, how we, if we do want just one general one, or do we want to have one specific to each subsection, so that, that can be hashed out once we get the policy, and because it's going to have to try to cover and be flexible enough to grow and change as our community grows over time. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of aspects with the whole online that we're just discovering, between the potential for, unfortunately, bad behavior or hacking, to just we're loaning our equipment out, policies on responsibilities of that, and how we're dealing with internet access that we may be providing and things of that nature. So it actually could encompass a lot. So coming up with one that maybe has a lot of those issues coming out of Troy, working then I think eventually with Abe, and that does make sense. So I like that, David.
Yeah, we might. Go ahead,
I'm
David.
sorry. The document that Troy shared with me, that's exactly, it covers all of those. It covers loaning of equipment, internet access, all of those areas.
So we might have to have it under its own section.
Yeah, I would say under operations. And then,
Yeah, under operations, yeah.
and that this policy would apply to the rest.
And the only reason I think we need to make sure that we're clear on how when people, you are searching for things, we think it makes sense where we stick something in a policy or a guideline, and then we uncover that there are people who have called me up and said, I can't find this for anything. Where is it? And and then I have to hunt through, because I know the tricks of what it's under and why it would be under there. But other people are thinking differently about how to look for things. So we want to make sure we make this as accessible as possible, and that makes sense under what we capture and those particular policies that people would be looking for in that particular section.
Yeah, I agree. It took me quite some time to learn how to find what I was looking for in policy.
Yeah.
Still does. There's sometimes I'm like, David, I just can't find it. I know it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we're all in agreement of putting this as a separate policy, and that is going to apply to all of the anti-harassment policies.
So get writing.
Okay, next item.
So we had quite a bit of, the board committee had quite a bit of discussion on the filling a vacancy midterm. I don't know if you want to circle back around to that one.
Well, no, that's part of the policy bylaws.
Okay, so leave that as.
I'm saying let's just wait another, keep all those suggestions that we had gone over. But unless one of us is planning on bailing really fast here, I think there's no urgency to it. And we can put that off for another month and see if we can meet in person.
Okay.
At least that's my preference.
All things being equal, the governor says June 30th, right? We should be able to get back after June 30th. Of course, we all know it'll probably be extended, but we should be able to get back face to face after June 30th, all things being equal, and they never are, but.
I'd like to hold off. Our city relations committee decided we would hold off until June or July with that contract, that we were going to continue having a discussion that a couple of the committee members wanted to have more conversation about, that we pulled last month. So in hopes that we can have face-to-face conversations tend to be less disorganized and awkward than this virtual meeting, and I would prefer to do it that way if we have our options. And quite frankly, any of the bylaws, none of them have that urgency to be addressed right at this moment.
I agree.
And I would just say, I think by us getting together, and you just gave us some direction, so we know what to do, because that's the concern with the whole online learning and the whole policy. I think that's where Trustee Moses, we had talked, and it was important. So now we kind of have direction from this committee. So now we can proceed in that direction and take care of what we need to do. That's more of a necessity right now.
Right.
So, and we're kind of getting back into the groove, you know, when you're in a routine of meeting monthly on a regular in the superintendent office complex, and now all of a sudden we're in these new situations that we had to kind of get back into the routine a little bit too. And hopefully we will, like you said, in July.
Good.
So this helps us though, for sure, because now we can jump on some of those and get back to you with some of those policies.
Yeah, those policies are pressing. The ones about, you know, the online learning and virtual and some of the changes to the safety and security policies, those are time sensitive and have an urgency to them. The board bylaws are, I mean, they're not perfect. They have issues, but they're not something I think we need to take up people's time right now, because this is a less than stellar way to have to do business.
I'll just say, Trustee Peskov, you'll have to deal with the new normal going forward. So,
We may have, and I said I'm willing if that's the case, but I'm willing to keep my fingers crossed for another month.
absolutely, and that's fine with me. I just like, while we postpone it, I know last time we talked about asking legal as far as the suggestions that we have. So I would say, I don't know if we did it or not, obviously with the whole COVID situation, but since we can do that, we don't have to really meet and get their response. Can we do that, Dr. Maliko and Mason? We get their input as far as our proposal.
Yeah, Trustee Moses, if you're talking about the bylaws we discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, we can. I can tell you just off the top of my head that the recommendation that we had asked for that specific one, filling a vacancy, we had asked legal, and we had also asked Brad, I'm going to not pronounce his last name.
Vanasek.
So I did ask him for direction on that, and there really wasn't any, like, you have to do it this way or that way. It was really, this is how it's done in most places, and then it's up to your board.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that that's the case, that we get clearance.
Yeah. I will double check though, just to be safe, but that's what I recall, is that there was no clear, it was like, this is what so-and-so is doing, this is what most people do. There's nothing that says the board can't decide another way to do it that they feel is best. And then I did want to just ask, so I can make sure I get the agenda to you more timely. I just want to ask for next month. Did you have anything on the top of your mind as far as which policies you'd like to review? Or I can go through and just send you some that we've had on our radar that, like, these are super outdated, we need to take a look at these. Or do you want me to send you a few and you let me know? Or did you want to review policies and then email us and let us know?
We could do a little bit of both. I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll be looking also as far as what are the outdated policies that we can have and send them your way, so we can have them for the agenda. And I welcome any member of the committee to do the same.
We also have updates from Neola. They send us updates twice a year, and we have many policies from them that we can bring to the board that need to be updated.
God bless Neola.
David,
Well, and I would.
to those electronically, like, I know there's that stack. I remember my first month in HR, you handed me that stack, and I was like, what is this? And it was all the Neola updates. Do we have those electronic access to those?
Yes, you do. They're in the board docs. When you log in a section, you can log in there and find them under updates. There's a special section there, and we can talk about that.
That sounds good.
And I would just say Brad Banasek is probably the best for, he's the expert. He came a couple of years ago, provided that training. And that's kind of what I remember him saying too, is you can kind of do these things so that whatever you come up with after you make whatever changes you liked, then I think we want to run it by the attorney and say, okay,
make sure something's
you can get
not
some
illegal.
Yeah, there's nothing that could be that we weren't thinking of that he knows.
We would be
but
challenged.
on those kind of rules, he's very well versed, and that's probably a good place to go to look at some of those things. And then the question too, you said, the pleasure of the committee, you were saying Mason next month, or did I hear that we were going to wait till July for the next meeting? Or are
Oh,
we meeting?
that's a good question.
It's up to the committee, because June would be most likely be because of, as Dr. Mead said, the governor's order extended the open meetings till June 30th would likely be, if you wanted a
Another
June, it would likely
virtual.
be virtual.
Yeah.
So the question is just whether or not you want to do that. Also considering, just a reminder too, you do have 2 regular board meetings in June. It's the 1 month plus the college meeting. Just so that you guys are all aware of your schedules too.
Well,
with
like
that.
I
And, we're
said,
okay either way. We're fine either way. If you want to meet in June virtually, we will. If you want to wait till July, we will do that, whatever the pleasure
I
of the
don't mind
committee
a
is.
June virtual meeting if there's something that's time sensitive.
I agree.
Okay. So do we want to tentatively set another date? And then if we are ready with something online learning or something that we think we need to get
Right,
to, and then
yeah.
we can decide if we need to meet or not, pending what
Yes.
that is. Does that make
Yep.
sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Addo?
Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I just don't think that we need to wait any longer. I think most of the things moving forwards will be done online regardless, but I'm okay with delaying it another.
He's a pessimist.
Well,
I'd like to go back and
Oh, I don't think it's gonna go back to normal, but I think we might be able to have 10 people meeting over at Tenike at some point.
well, do you want to stick with the same? I'm just going to say a month from now would be June. Okay, the board meeting is June 8th. A month from
And
now would
today-
be June 9th. Would that be what? I'm just throwing out a date. I don't. It's up to you guys what you think. I always like getting them on the calendar in advance if possible.
Well, and that would help Mason to be able to get something to us in a time frame that we can. I don't like to not be prepared ahead of time. So I like to kind of do my research and read the what we're going to be discussing ahead of time. So how much time do you need?
If we met the 9th, if you meet that week, then you have the board meeting as well on the 22nd. So you have the 8th and the 22nd that we can use for potential approvals
Of something,
and
yeah.
discussion items. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do have time. If you met like the 9th, 10th, or 11th, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
yeah, I would suggest the 11th of June.
11th?
If that's okay with everyone.
and just make sure, because we're gonna have, the finance committee is gonna be meeting because of the budget and all that kind of stuff,
The
so,
finance
and
meeting is meeting
and some,
June
do you
1st.
have your date, June 1st?
Yeah,
Okay,
finance is June 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, June 1st.
you just don't wanna cross over because you got board members on both. so,
Both committees,
Yeah.
correct.
June 11th's good for me. And can we do the 5 o'clock? Start at 5?
That's fine with me as well.
At the soups? Are you okay with 5?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that if everyone. Yeah.
Gotta get golf in during the day.
That's great, Dr.
And
Good.
so David, Eric will send that out then, right? To who needs to, the same people that are here today, I believe. Okay.
Except for John
Good.
Leacher, he doesn't need to probably show up again.
He looks pretty good though.
One thing that I don't want to forget, do we ask for citizen participation? We didn't have any, right?
No, committees do not allow for citizen participation. They can,
Oh,
they
we
can't
do.
weigh in, they can just watch.
Okay. All right,
That's part of the committee rules.
Are there any other considerations or policies that anybody want to bring forward?
No?
Okay. Dr. Maleko, anything from your side?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Adjourned at 5:57.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right, goodbye.
Everyone,
Thank you.
thank you.
Nice
Have
to
a
see you.
good afternoon.